In 1987, Patrick Bateman, a wealthy New York investment banker, leads a life centered around dining at exclusive restaurants and maintaining a facade for his fiancée Evelyn and his group of superficial affluent associates, whom he secretly despises. Bateman meticulously details his daily routine, including his morning exercise, skincare regimen, and love for high-end designer clothing. He also shares his obsession with his music collection, featuring artists like Huey Lewis and The News, Phil Collins, and Whitney Houston. Despite his engagement, Bateman is having an affair with Evelyn's friend Courtney, who is in turn involved with another of Bateman's colleagues, Timothy. Meanwhile, Courtney is engaged to Louise Carruthers, one of Bateman's other co-workers. Bateman and his associates often compete by showing off their business cards. Infuriated by the quality of his colleague Paul Allen's card, Bateman murders a homeless man and his dog. Later, at a Christmas party, Bateman arranges a dinner with Paul, who mistakenly believes Bateman is another colleague, Marcus Halberstrom. Bateman gets Paul drunk, brings him back to his apartment, and after discussing the song "Hip to Be Square," kills him with an axe. He then disposes of Paul's body and creates the illusion that Paul has fled to London. Shortly after, a private detective, Donald Kimball, interviews Bateman about Paul's disappearance. Bateman continues his violent tendencies by inviting two prostitutes, whom he names Christy and Sabrina, to his apartment, where he tortures them after having sex. Throughout this encounter, Bateman refers to himself as Paul Allen. The next day, Bateman attempts to murder his colleague, Louise Carruthers, in a restaurant bathroom, but stops when Louise mistakes the attempt as a sexual advance and expresses his love for Bateman, who flees in disgust. After killing a model, Bateman invites his secretary, Jean, to his apartment, intending to murder her as well. However, he changes his mind after receiving a message from Evelyn and sends Jean home. Kimball later reassures Bateman that he is not a suspect. Bateman's violence escalates when he has a threesome with his friend Elizabeth and Christy at Paul's apartment. He kills Elizabeth during sex, prompting Christy to flee. She discovers several female corpses in the apartment before Bateman chases her down the stairs and kills her with a chainsaw. Bateman then ends his engagement with Evelyn. That night, while using an ATM, he encounters a stray kitten and contemplates feeding it to the machine, but ends up shooting a woman who intervenes. A police chase ensues, but Bateman manages to escape after destroying the police cars. He then heads to his office, where he mistakenly enters the wrong building and kills a security guard and a janitor. Believing he is in his own office, Bateman leaves a panicked confession on his lawyer Harold's answering machine. The next morning, Bateman visits Paul's apartment, expecting it to be the scene of his crimes, but finds it empty and for sale. The real estate broker tells him to leave. Back at his office, Bateman's secretary, Jean, discovers disturbing drawings of murder and mutilation in his journal. Later, Bateman confronts Harold in a restaurant, trying to confess to being a serial killer. However, Harold dismisses the confession as a joke, thinking Bateman is someone else, and claims to have had dinner with Paul in London just days before. Bateman, confused and frustrated, returns to his friends and, in a final voiceover, realizes that he will continue to evade justice, acknowledging that his confession has meant nothing.